you on Yom Ha'atzmaut.
Why am I here?
Why are you here?
I don't do that.
Okay. That's fine.
But everybody around you does, so.
Yes.
I'd like to actually begin by talking about Moses. And as we know, Moses, at the end of the 40 years in the wilderness, is told, Moses and Aaron are told, they cannot enter the land of Israel. And it seems to happen as a result of an incident that it's been 40 years. Miriam, the sister of Moses and Aaron, has died. There's no water. It's no fun to be in the desert without water. And the people start complaining. And not only do they say that there's no water for us to drink right now and we're thirsty, but they even use phrases that a previous generation had said, like, better we should have died in Mitzrayim than to die of thirst now. And why did we leave Egypt? This is going to happen to us. God intervenes and tells Moses and Aaron, tells Moses to take his staff, which he had back in Egypt, to go up to a Selah, to this big rock, and to talk to it and tell it to give water. Moses takes the staff and he hits the stone, as we know, 2 times. He takes the staff in his hand. He says, Shim'u na hamorim, listen, you rebels. Hanotzi mai min haselah hazeh. Will we cause water to come forth from this stone? And then he hits the stone twice. Water comes out. It's enough for everybody to drink and for all their flocks to drink. And things are seemingly great, but then God tells Moses and Aaron that since you didn't sanctify me in the eyes of the people, you cannot enter the land of Israel. Shalom, Chana.
Hi.
Hi. So this is a very difficult thing. Moses took us out of Egypt, and he was with us for 40 years, and he suffered all of our complaints for 40 years. And when we're about to enter the land, God says, you can't enter. And so many of our classic commentators have tried to understand what exactly Moses did wrong in this incident. What has caused him not to enter the land? Anybody remember what you read or have your own ideas?
What I remember reading is not so much that he hit the rock, but he took credit for giving the water instead of giving credit to God.
Ah, right. So will we take water out of this rock rather than saying, does God do it? Yafeh. Any more?
To me that said that you did not sanctify me as you should have.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So how would he have sanctified more?
If he had spoken to the stone as God commanded him to do.
Ah, okay. So the problem is speaking. It was hitting rather than speaking.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Or he could have sanctified God more by saying, it's God who's giving you this water. You need to trust he's going to take care of you. That's where the water's coming from, not from me.
Okay. Giving the credit to God and telling people to have faith in God more than he did. Hi, Jennifer.
Hi.
So we're talking about why Moses and Aaron were punished for not going into the Holy Land. And so far I've heard 2 explanations. One is that he took credit for the water going forth and not giving the credit to God. Maybe because he hit the rock instead of talking to the rock. Any other reasons?
I don't remember.
So among other reasons that we see among the classic commentators is that it was okay to hit the rock 1 time, but there was no need to hit the rock twice. Once Moses might have thought that's what God wanted, but why hit twice? It was unnecessary violence. And it might have been because it was hot and everybody was thirsty and Miriam had died and the people were complaining and he was just angry. And so he hit it and he hit it again.
He was frustrated.
He was frustrated. But it's not just anybody. This is a leader of all of Am Yisrael, and you can't just go around hitting even a rock, even if you're frustrated. That was why Moses wasn't able to enter the land, according to one opinion. Any other answers? So that he hit the rock at all, or he hit it twice, or that he took credit. Or when he said, when Moses said, will we cause water to go forth? Maybe it was his own lack of faith. He wasn't sure water would come forth. Maybe we can't. He had a bad day. People have bad hair days, and he had a bad faith day. You like that one, Mike? There's another idea, which is that it was okay to hit the rock and not talk to the rock. And it was okay to hit the rock twice. That was fine. And it was okay to say, will we cause water to come forth from the stone? Everything was fine. The problem was the way they addressed Am Yisrael. They said, Shim'una hamorim, listen, you rebels. Is that a way to talk to a holy people? Is that polite? Is that derech eretz? Is that educational? It's not. And after 40 years, if Moses doesn't get this, you can't address people this way, then maybe he shouldn't be taking the people into the land of Israel. So, as often happens, there are many interpretations. Elu ve'elu divrei Elohim chayim. These and those are all words of a living God. There's more than one answer, more than one correct answer. A little bit later, I'd like to relate to the answer of a Hasidic Rebbe. His title is the Mei Shiloach. I'd like to come back to that. But now I'd like to start talking a little bit about Yom Ha'atzmaut. So, as we've probably noticed, it's customary in Israel nowadays, and Yom Ha'atzmaut, not just to eat meat, but to have barbecues. And very often we have barbecues in public places. Not everybody has a yard or a garden, and people descend upon public areas, on parks and roads and creeks. And there are areas where you literally, no one steps foot all year long, but on Yom Ha'atzmaut, you have several families fighting over a little piece of land. You have sometimes traffic islands dividing a two-way street. People go there and they settle there, and they set up their barbecue there and they eat meat. And when we eat meat, it tends to be a lot of meat, not a little bit of meat. It's hot dogs and hamburgers and pargit. And all that is just to warm up, because at the end they bring out the steaks. And by the time you get to the steaks, usually people are completely full. You have to feed the kids early because they're young and they're hungry, and the women probably get full on the pargit. But the macho man will keep eating and eat the steaks as well. So my question is, why do we do this? How can we understand this custom? What does it teach us about Israeli society? And is it good or not good? So any association...
Is it a Jewish thing or an Israeli thing?
Sorry?
Is it a Jewish thing or an Israeli thing?
Okay. Good.
I never saw it in the States.
You did not see it in the States?
Never.
Never saw it, okay.
I think that the tradition in the state is on the 4th of July,
Right.
which is their Independence Day, and they do barbecue. And I think maybe we got it from them.
Okay, so it might be the result of American influence. Any other thoughts, feelings, knowledge?
It could very well be also the Zecher Korban.
Oh,
Nice.
Yofi. So there are a couple of well-known Zionist religious rabbis who have said this as well. And there's a rabbi named Rabbi Sherki, Rabbi Uri Sherki. He's one of the leading thinkers in the Zionist movement, in the religious Zionist movement. And right, and what he says is that this is, because it's many secular people who do it as well as religious. He believes that it is a subconscious desire on the part of the secular people to bring a korban todah, a sacrifice of gratitude, a sacrifice of thanksgiving. Just like in the old days when there was a temple, there was a Beit Mikdash, and people brought animal sacrifices. There were different kinds. There was a sin offering and a whole offering, and one of the offerings was Thanksgiving. It was a Thanksgiving offering. We're thankful to have a state, and therefore intuitively, just like we brought animals and ate them, we ate the meat, now we're doing it as well. There's another rabbi,
Bit of a question on that, because one of my early experiences in Israel back in 1978,
ooh,
going to the drive-in with two kids, an infant and a toddler in pajamas in the back seat of the car in Tel Aviv, pulling up and putting the speaker in the car, and then looking around at my Israeli neighbors all around us who were sitting on the tops of their vans and outside of their vehicles in lawn chairs, barbecuing at the drive-in.
what kind of drive-in? A drive-in movie?
It was entirely, you bring your own food to an American drive-in. If you don't want to go up to the vendor, that's fine. But I have never seen anybody get out of the car and start barbecuing at the drive-in in the States. And we went to a lot of them as kids. I think that this is just the Israeli picnic mentality. It's a siba lemesiba.
When you went to the drive-in, it was Yom Ha'atzmaut, or was it a different day?
No, it was just a regular. We went to see Chitty Chitty Bang Bang with the kids. It was just a regular event.
So Israelis just like barbecues. Okay. That might not be so much in accordance with what I'm going to say now, but okay. Trying to get this. Okay, there's another rabbi, Rabbi Ronen Neubert, also a Zionist religious rabbi from Ra'anana, and he has written that this also has to do with the sacrifice, but not the sacrifice in the temple, not the Thanksgiving offering, but the Pesach sacrifice, Korban Pesach. That was the original barbecue. That was the original mangal. We took animals and then we ate them. And
you had to eat it all up. You couldn't have it leftovers.
Eat all of it up. Right. Not just enough to get full, but more than you need.
Mm-hmm.
And he feels, again, that this is intuitive among modern Israelis. And that's not an accident. That would happen both on Pesach, which is the beginning of our freedom and our Torah observance, and now, because both the giving of the Torah, freedom and Torah, as well as Israel, have to be done. They're part of the physical world. They're part of, in Hebrew it's called the Ha'olam HaGashmi. We're not, when we're slaves, we don't control our own destiny. People tell us what to do. When we're in exile, we also control our own destiny less. And we could afford to be very moral because we didn't have a country to run. We didn't have any power. It's more practical when we actually have a country to run. We have to do physical things and material things. And therefore we eat meat because we're part of the physical world. We're not just in an ivory tower, and we're not just in a Beit Midrash. We have to apply things. Okay, so those are a couple of religious thoughts of modern day rabbis. There's also explanations which have to do with ethnic backgrounds. So for instance, one explanation is that the barbecue on Yom Ha'atzmaut is the descendant, the logical follow-up on the kumsitz that they used to have in the Palmach. So before there was a country, there were Jews who fought in the underground to achieve independence, and the crack unit, the most there was the Haganah, but within Haganah there was the Palmach. They were the elite units, and they used to have kumzitzim as well. Sit around, have a bonfire, sing songs, and cook food in the fire. But we were modest, and it was potatoes. It wasn't meat in those days. And as the country became more affluent, we graduated to meat, and then to large quantities of meat. The idea here is that it's the Palmach, which were Ashkenazim, almost entirely of European descent. So this is an Ashkenazi custom. That's one way of looking at it. Another way of
It's
looking
not
at
correct, by the way.
Okay.
Certainly not correct, because Palmach had everybody that was currently in Israel. And that was a lot of the people that currently were in Israel were not Ashkenazim. They were from Mizrahi, and they were here forever and ever, much longer than the people from Europe. And they were also part of the Palmach. If you look at the Palmach, at the real Palmach names and everything else, you will see that quite a few of them were not necessarily Ashkenazim.
Okay. But apparently,
so I don't think that
agree.
it's a
Okay.
matter of Ashkenazim or Sfaradim. As a matter of fact, you can see more and more barbecues and barbecues dafka on Chag, on Pesach, on not Chol HaMoed, but on Pesach Day. Okay.
Yom Tov. Right.
Yom Tov, you can see, and I have around me people, of Mizrahi background that are Dati, and they make barbecues. Definitely. On Chag.
Okay, so alongside this explanation that is an Ashkenazi, that is the development of the Ashkenazi Palmach custom, there's another one which sees it as a Sephardi, as a specifically North African custom. That there was a Muslim holiday, dafka, not the whole Arab world, but dafka in North Africa, and that influenced what the Jews did, the North African Jews did, and that led to the North African Jews having barbecues on Lag BaOmer. And that, for instance, there are massive celebrations at Meron, not far from Carmiel, on Lag BaOmer, with hundreds of thousands of people, most of whom are of Eastern backgrounds, Mizrahi backgrounds, and a lot of barbecue going on there. And this theory says that the barbecue in a public sphere, where you have people on traffic islands and every inch being fought over, became much more popular after 1977. And why does this mean anything? Because in 77, because in 77, Begin came to power. Begin was Ashkenazi, but many of his supporters were Sfaradim. And he rode part of the reason he was elected was he rode this wave of resentment against the Ashkenazi elite establishment who discriminated against Sfaradim. So Begin's election, the Mapach, was considered to be a watershed moment for new legitimization for Sephardi culture. Mizrahi music came out of the underground. It used to be, we only heard Mizrahi music very, very specific hours on the radio, if at all. People, they just heard themselves. They bought cassettes. You could hear it at the Tachem Merkazit in people's homes, but you didn't hear it on the regular radio. And that changed after 77. And so this theory says that the same thing is true for the Mangal. Since the Mangal is this North African custom, once the North African Israelis felt more comfortable and less repressed, they went out into the public sphere and did it in public. Okay, so we have two different explanations which need not contradict each other. That we have it coming from both ends. Both Ashkenazim and Sephardim are developing customs by doing this. Comments, questions? Okay.
No, listening to this just now has reminded me of the Zionist youth movements in England, where having a kumsitz with the major thing being a bonfire and singing lots of songs and dancing, with the emphasis was on the singing and not on the food, although food was brought along as well. That was a secondary aspect of it. But the idea of sitting together around a bonfire and singing Zionist songs was quite a big thing in the Zionist youth movements in England when I was a teenager.
Yeah, and when we had the Hebrew session, Rabbi Gil said that he grew up here in Israel, and he remembers the same thing happening here in Israel with his youth movement, that there was a lot of, they spent time in nature and singing and dancing, not at night, during the day. And that when they ate falafel. But it wasn't the emphasis on meat. Nowadays, it is less singing and dancing, at least during the day. And there's more emphasis on eating and more on the meat specifically.
The Palmach kumsitz was always at night because they were an illicit organization. So when they are meeting, and they were meeting at night because those people were working during the day, they were meeting at night, and in order to make sure that the British don't think that they are meeting for doing a
conspiratorial reasons,
conspiracy against the British, they would sing and dance, and that's kind of thing that went all over the place afterwards in the movements outside of Israel. It was brought in from that into outside of Israel, and that was after the establishment of the state, as far as I can tell. The other things in terms of the not eating meat, it's not true that in the Palmach they didn't make barbecues on those occasions, because even in their songs you can find that they went and pilfered chickens from the farmers in order to make barbecue and eat, because some of them, were in hiding and did not have any kind of sustenance. So those were the times that when pilfering from the lulim was sort of okay, and it wasn't something that was everybody kind of knew it and closed their eyes about it. It's not so nice to say, but that's how it was.
Okay.
Economic reality that people had to deal with as well. When we came in 1977, if you wanted to balance the budget, you figured out how to put beans into the menu a lot more often, how to do a lot more vegetarian cooking, because if you wanted to eat the American style diet of hamburgers in the afternoon and chicken or steak or something at night, you weren't going to survive long on your Israeli income. So I think that for a long time, meat was just a very expensive imported product, with the exception of, the frozen chickens, which they promoted and subsidized by the government when we first came here.
All right, so Jennifer, that's a perfect lead-in now for the next theory, which is that eating meat, having barbecues, is wanting to be like the West, and specifically like the Americans. And so we weren't affluent enough, but we've become more affluent over the years. And we know that the Americans have barbecues also on their Independence Day. And therefore, we want to do similar.
In truth, Americans barbecue all summer long.
Right, and we do it
Yes,
at
extra on July 4th, but all summer long.
all summer long.
Also do the Israelis.
So it's been pointed out.
The British don't because it's always raining.
It's been pointed out that there actually are, other than Israel, there are 8 countries in which there's a widespread custom of having barbecue on the national day. So let's see if we can name what they are. One is the United States. What else?
It was Israel, obviously.
Other than Israel. So we have Israel, the US,
Argentina.
Argentina, they like their meat.
Germany?
Not Germany. Not Germany.
Brazil?
Not Germany?
Okay, so it's El Sahana. Wow.
Ah, hello, I'm
Hello,
here.
Hi, Elsa.
America.
Good
Right,
to
Elsa.
see you.
You got up
I
here
think
early in the
think
morning.
Mexico.
Elsa, we're talking about Argentina right now when you got on. So according to what I read, it's
I
United.
think Mexico also.
Okay, so according to what I read, there were 3 Latin American countries: Argentina, Uruguay, and Chile, and a few more Anglo-Saxon countries: South Africa, Australia, and New Zealand. Maybe I might have skipped maybe one more: Australia, Uruguay, Argentina, Brazil, also South American, South Africa, New Zealand, and Chile.
Mm-hmm.
And it's been pointed out that all of these countries were colonies. In all these countries, Europeans came and either displaced or wiped out or took control from the indigenous populations. And that none of these countries are, say, countries from Europe or the developing world that were not colonized. So not Germany and not France also on Bastille Day, and not Italy and any of their national days. All these countries, and so there are theories about this. So one theory is that eating meat. What is a barbecue? Barbecue, first of all, is not only eating meat, but the meat is the main food. And traditionally, when people have their food and their nutrition, they try to have meat, but meat is only one component. If you have a soup, meat is a component in the soup. If you have some kind of stew, meat is a component in the stew. But to eat large quantities of meat, where meat is the main thing itself, a steak, or pargit and steak and hot dog and hamburger, it's much more meat than people need for nutrition. And people are full, and they keep eating either out of because they're gluttons, or as a sign of dominance, to show that we can. So that you take an animal, which is alive and vital, you kill it, and then you eat its meat, you take its life force, and it makes you stronger physically. So this has been compared to, look, we're white people, we're Europeans, we came to this new land, we're the rulers of this land, we've taken the resources from the native people, and we're in charge. Eating meat is seen to be symbolic as a kind of victory celebration over the locals. Another theory which is related is that eating meat, especially that barbecue specifically, is kind of like a gender thing. That usually it's not one person. A person doesn't make a barbecue him or herself. It's a family or a group of friends together. And very often there are traditional roles. The women might have done the shopping. The women might set up the table. But the ones who actually put the meat on the grill and stand over it are usually the men. And the men usually eat more food than the women as well. The women eat, they get full. Oh, I can't have any more, or I'm on a diet, or I'm too fat, or I have a high cholesterol. And the men eat more and more and more. Who eats the steaks? There's no room. The women and the kids don't have room anymore. The macho men who keep eating and eat the steaks after they have no need whatsoever, no nutritional need for them whatsoever. And it's also been pointed out that there are certain terms which you use to describe sex have deep terms, like he's porking her, and all kinds of things like that. Or what a nice chaticha, that there's a sexual imagery, or that meat imagery and sexual imagery tend to go together. It has to do with dominance, male dominance over women, white dominance over indigenous dominance. We can agree or not disagree. If we can accept any of this, then we have to think about what it means for
What you said is we can agree or not disagree.
Oh, we can
It's
agree
very
or we can,
interesting.
we can agree or we can disagree. We can agree or we can disagree. What might this say about Israeli society? The fact that we want to do barbecues and eat so much meat. So we can leave aside for a minute the question of.
Well, it's naturally a macho society, and the Bible itself was also a macho society. So what we are talking about is really male dominance, and male dominance within the Bible, and male dominance which continued throughout the Jewish traditions and the Jewish faith.
Not only the Jewish tradition.
We're also saying on Yom Ha'atzmaut, now we are finally not under the thumb of other people. We are now independent. And we have our own strength. We're not subjugated anymore.
Right. So it could be that eating meat appeals to us because we're also celebrating our not only our independence, but we see our independence as being a kind of dominance. Look, these Arabs wanted to prevent us from having a state or wipe us out. We're stronger than they are. We beat them in war. We defeat the terrorists, the soldiers and the terrorists, and therefore let's eat meat. By eating meat, it's
but they are also eating meat. They are also making barbecues at the same time.
I think it's a tribal issue that goes back to hunter-gatherer societies where you gather in the harvest and then you hunt together as a group, and then the whole group shares in the benefits of
but you don't engage in gluttony in that circumstance because there isn't enough to go around.
Now there is.
However,
now there is.
I hardly think that most Israelis who do barbecues think about dominance or machoism.
No, I'm sure they don't.
Think they go and enjoy being outside and eating a barbecue.
No, it's not conscious. Everyone, no one says it's conscious. It's they're saying it's subconscious.
It's not something that you think about when you're going to make a barbecue. But if you're looking at deeper feelings, deeper unconscious things, that's what the rabbi says, then you can look at what it really means in terms of a society. Okay? And what it means culturally in terms of a society. And that's why I was saying before that even the Bible or the Jewish culture in a way is a macho culture. And it is a culture that traditionally, until fairly recently when women woke up and started studying themselves, also, and it is still a struggle. It's still a struggle to make men understand that there are other issues around and they cannot dominate all the time. So maybe when we start barbecuing not meat but maybe fish or maybe vegetarian steaks or who knows what, maybe we'll start understanding that there is no need for this domination.
I think that it shows.
From your mouth to God's ear, Hannah.
Yeah, in that the percentage of Israelis who are vegetarian and vegans is growing much faster than a lot of other places.
than most other places.
Most of the
Apparently,
places.
I heard that Tel Aviv is the per capita vegan capital of the world.
Yes.
Mhm.
I guess or the Western world, probably less than Western world.
Well, is the difference between being a vegan by choice and being a vegan or a
Right.
vegetarian out of necessity because of poverty? So certainly voluntary veganism, Tel Aviv's the capital.
Mhm.
So until now, I've tried to present things that I've heard, pirushim that I've heard, and sociological explanations that I've read somewhere. Now I'd like to move a little bit more into my own thoughts on the matter, and I would like to, first of all, even if we leave the question of dominance aside for a second, the question of sacrifice. Is that most of us probably don't miss animal sacrifices. The
Right.
prayer books, traditional prayer books, ask that the temple be rebuilt and that we reinstitute animal sacrifices. But for instance, the Rambam, Maimonides, feels that there never should have been animal sacrifices. That this is a pagan holdover. In pagan society, you believe that the gods actually ate food and somebody had to feed them. And so people would bring a sacrifice to the gods and the gods would literally consume them. But once you realize that there's only one God who created the whole world and doesn't have a body and doesn't eat and drink, it doesn't make sense to bring animal sacrifices. And that we shouldn't have had any. But because of the sin of the golden calf, God said, don't make an image, and the people made an image. God made a compromise. He said the people need concrete ways of serving God. And everybody is used to bringing sacrifices, so I'll go ahead and let them give sacrifices. And I will actually prescribe sacrifices. Go ahead and follow these rules.
But reinterpret their meaning.
Right, but even the fact that they exist is a compromise. Here, do it, do this kind, do that kind. Ideally, however, at least according to the Rambam, we shouldn't be doing it. And a lot has happened in the last close to 2,000 years, and most of us can serve God through prayer and meditation and reading and togetherness, and don't actually feel the need to take an animal and slit its throat and splatter its blood and smoke its organs and all those things that happen. So I personally don't really relate to these, to neither Rav Sherky nor Rav Neubert's explanations about the sacrifices.
Of course, a lot of those sacrifices were meant for food for the Kohanim and the Levites.
Yeah.
Right, they benefited. They got the food. Right. But they also could have been farmers. But God said, don't be farmers. Work in the temple instead.
They couldn't own land. They couldn't be farmers.
Right.
Exactly.
Because they were priests. But if they weren't priests, they were. Okay. So the next thing I like to do now is, if you remember, we talked about the reasons, the explanation for why Moses couldn't enter the Holy Land. And maybe because he hit the stone, or hit it twice, or he called the people rebels, or because he took credit for the water coming out, or because he didn't have faith the water would come out. And here I'd like to bring in the explanation of Mei HaShiloch. Mei HaShiloch was a Hasidic Rebbe. He lived a couple hundred years ago. And what he said is Moses had made a very simple mistake. He thought that what was right 40 years ago is right today. God told me to take the staff that I had it 40 years ago and go to a stone and get water from the stone. 40 years ago, God told me to hit the stone. So Moses assumed that he should hit the stone again, even though God hadn't said to hit the stone. He had a certain amount of continuity. It worked 40 years ago. It makes sense that it's the same thing today. When in fact, says this very Orthodox, we call him today Haredi Hasidic Rebbe, things today are not where they were 40 years ago. People's spirituality doesn't stay in the same place. And Moses, because he didn't realize that things change and wasn't in tune to these subtle changes, was no longer he was no longer the best person to lead the people. So I like to apply this to the question of Yom Ha'atzmaut. And in order to do so, I'd like to ask, what are we celebrating when we have a country? What is the meaning of a Jewish state? We can say, what did people think of 100 years ago, and 120 years ago, and 70 years ago, and 40 years ago? And what should we be thinking of today? So one of the main factors behind the Zionist movement was anti-Semitism. Herzl experienced it, and the Jews in Russia and Poland experienced it through pogroms. If we have our own country, then we won't be so dependent on the whims of the Gentiles who go out and have demonstrations, pogroms against us. So it was based on nationalism and national survival. And in order to build infrastructure for a country, and in order for the country to emerge and survive the invading armies and overcome terror over the years, we needed an army. We needed an underground, and we needed an army. And we needed parents to send their kids to the army, knowing that the kids might not come back alive. And we tended to glorify militarism. I think, and there's still parades, even today, there are still parades in Yom Ha'atzmaut in which we see our weapons, we see what planes we have. There's a militaristic aspect to it, less than there used to be.
People go and visit places.
Sorry?
People go and visit places where there are tanks and armaments.
Right, people go to Latrun, for instance, and
exactly.
museums, and which makes a certain amount of sense. We're celebrating the fact that we exist, and a big reason for it is our ability to defend ourselves. But in the past, I think we saw things as a zero-sum game. It was an important part of our identity that we are stronger than the Arabs. The Arabs are hostile. Our strength allows us to overcome them. That was a big part of what it meant to be Israeli. We have an army. We serve in the army. Like apparently the highest, most prestigious thing you could do in Israel was to be a pilot. So I heard a joke that a guy dies and goes to heaven, and he sees God, and God says, "So how was your life? How was it? Were things?" The guy said, "I can't complain. I had a good job. I made a decent living. I had a nice family, but I always wanted to be a pilot. I was always jealous of the pilots." And God said, "I understand. I've also been jealous of the pilots." Right? So being a pilot was more important, was more prestigious even than being God himself, herself. Hopefully we're not at the same place that we were when the meaning of the state that was simply that we exist and we're strong, we have an army, and we're stronger than the Arabs. Every Shabbat we say Tfilah L'Shlom HaMedina, the blessing for the state of Israel. And we say, Avinu, our parent in heaven, Barech Medinat Yisrael, bless the state of Israel. Reshit Smichat Geulatenu, the beginning of our redemption. This is an idea that even though Ben Gurion and other secular Zionists might have even formally denied that there was a religious element to Zionism, there was, and certainly among Rabbi Kook and the officially religious Zionists, it was, is that we have a country not just to survive as an ethnic group or as a nation, and not just so it will be easier to keep certain rules of Torah and go on to work on Shabbat. The state of Israel exists for the sake of all of humanity. That's why we exist. We exist in order to bring total redemption and harmony and the Messianic period to all of humanity. In the short term, it involves conflict, specifically with Arabs and Muslims. But it's important to realize that this conflict has to be temporary, and that is not the goal. Military victory is a necessary means, but it is not the goal in and of itself. The goal is total universal harmony. And it's often compared to Gan Eden, to paradise, to the Garden of Eden. In the Garden of Eden, nobody ate meat. we were all vegetarians. Human beings were allowed to begin eating meat only after the flood as a compromise because we had bloodlust. And so it was better to apply this bloodlust to eating animals than to killing fellow humans.
Yeah, I heard
Sorry?
I heard a lovely midrash when I was in the States, this is going back a long time, that God originally wanted people, the Jews, to be vegetarians, and he saw that wasn't going to work. So he said, okay, so only half the animals on the land, half the birds in the sky, and half the creatures in the sea, and then only part of them.
For kasher. Very nice. Very nice. We're partial vegetarians. So God willing, we will again be vegetarians. According to most opinions, when the total messianic harmony is here, we'll stop eating meat again. Therefore, I'd like to suggest that we should not be interested in customs which would emphasize dominance, not over animals, not over other peoples, not of one gender over another gender, but rather look for ways which emphasize harmony, because the state should, at this point in our existence, we're not the same we were 40 years ago. And we should see the state as a means for harmony throughout the Middle East and throughout humanity. And therefore, my personal recommendation is that if you're not a vegetarian during the year, to consider avoiding meat dafka on Yom Ha'atzmaut. For that 25-hour period. Eat meat you want during Yom Zikaron, eat meat as soon as Yom Ha'atzmaut ends, but during that 25-hour period to consider not eating meat. And I would also advise not fish either. Meat, not beef, not chicken, or even fish. But yes, no problem with dairy or eggs, because we want to visualize a future in which we're friends with the animals, and the animals are happy to give us their milk and happy to give us their eggs to share with us. We don't want to take their lives. So in the previous session, so Inbal was there, and she said, "Oh, we're vegetarians. It's not a problem. We never eat meat." And Rav Gil said that for the last several years they've been having vegetarian barbecues on Yom Ha'atzmaut.
What do they barbecue?
I don't know, maybe soy products and, really good, like to take
plants.
There are plenty of things you can do.
Actually,
Chatzilim, kishuim are good barbecued.
Yeah,
You can
seitan.
put vegetables and barbecue them. You can put them in a marinade first and throw them on the barbecue. There are a lot of things you can barbecue.
Yeah.
Yeah, chatzil is wonderful that way.
That's what I said.
actually,
Chatzil, yeah.
I got one of these Impossible or Beyond Burger things, and it was delicious.
Oh,
It was good, yeah.
Great.
Oh,
yeah,
a lot of them are very
I
good.
got it in the freezer department in Super Soul. So,
well, I'm a purist. I've tried it. Sometimes some of it's okay,
Nutritionist.
but my late husband used to buy kosher sausage from a company called Morningstar Farms,
Oh, yes.
and
Yes.
I would look at it and I would tell him, "Don't you eat that in my presence," and it was awful. It was really terrible. There is stuff now that isn't bad. It really is not all bad, but I'm not there yet. I eat fish,
I
and I will eat meat. But I have not had meat. I can't remember when. Even when I go out, I don't order meat.
They're very high in sodium. There are a lot of chemicals that go into holding all of that together, and you're far better off just finding fresh vegetables that you like and putting them in a marinade and throwing them on the grill. And using some corn and cook a pot of beans and stuff to go with it all.
The thing I bought was all natural ingredients, and it was not chemicals.
Yeah, and it's a small fortune at the moment when the price
And
is.
it's expensive. Yes.
But in the meantime, you can barbecue tofu as well.
Mm. Ah.
And tofu should definitely be marinated. Tofu has no texture or flavor of its own, which means you can do anything to
Anything
it.
you want with it. Right, right.
Yeah.
It's a
I live on
blank
tofu.
slate.
Yeah.
Tabula rasa.
Yeah, I will.
Ken.
I'm sorry, I had to leave for a few minutes, so I didn't hear part of what you were saying.
punchline.
Unfortunately, what was the punchline?
So my personal opinion is that we're not in the same place that we were 40 years ago or 70 years ago.
Correct.
That we should see the state of Israel not as a zero-sum game against the Arabs. That we need an army, but it's not the be-all and the end-all of the country. That we
Correct.
exist in order to bring the Mashiach and harmony to all of humanity. And just as in Gan Eden there was no meat, and there will be no meat again when the Mashiach comes. So on Yom Ha'atzmaut, which represents the beginning of the redemption, I'm suggesting avoiding meat or fish, and yet yes, fish and dairy if you're not a vegan. We can also barbecue because for all the custom of barbecue and perhaps the custom of sacrifice, but without the murder, without the death and the meat involved.
Yeah, well, I agree
Well,
with
fish
you.
are also living beings, and we are killing them, and not so kindly either. We suffocate them when we catch them.
Not necessarily, but fish is fish. I think that it's a staple. That in many cases, fish is very, very nutritious, and some of the people that cannot eat too much beans because of other things that beans do to your digestive system. Fish is a very, very good protein, and especially there are some specific fish that are good protein. And I would like to continue.
I'm not arguing against eating fish, but there is this notion that we kill animals to eat them. We kill fish too.
Well, yes.
But because we don't understand the lives of fish the way we understand the lives of land animals, we kind of disregard that. And we don't usually take a knife to fish to kill it. We suffocate them so we can kind of distance ourselves.
Well, we give them
we forget that.
We give them a bang on the head.
No, but before we do that, we pull them out of the water and they suffocate.
Right.
Would you like to be suffocated, or would you like to be knocked out?
but
well, probably knocked out is better.
But in kashrut, we pay attention to how we kill animals.
That's
and
right.
We do our best, presumably, to avoid their suffering. We don't do that for fish.
They don't do that in kashrut anymore.
We also don't avoid eating the blood of fish. Anybody who thinks that fish don't have blood, excuse me, if they're alive, they have blood. But
when you cook
it, you doesn't associate fish the way we do land animals because we never have been that knowledgeable about their lives.
Yeah, we have been knowledgeable.
Unfortunately, there are so many meat eaters that think they're eating meat that is kosher. And to my mind, it's not kosher if it comes from a factory farm where the animals are not treated the way they should be.
I agree. Rabbi Soloveitchik used to say that veal should not be considered kosher because of the way animals were treated in their lives. It's horrible.
I haven't had veal in 30 years.
Veal calves are raised.
Mm-hmm.
I think
I don't eat red meat anymore.
Of all of us, that the shift should be less on the level of feasting and gorging ourselves, and more over into the level of communal
sustenance
and the entertainment. To me, the much more important than the barbecues is to be just the getting together with friends And I loved the public performances that went on for hours with all the matnas coming in and doing their thing with with our national entertainers showing up in one taxi after another. They'd get out and do a shtick for how many minutes. I remember standing out in the rain to watch Esau Cohen and Tzipi Shavit and all these.
It'll be interesting to see how we accomplish this year.
And I was going to say that this year, who knows, we may not be able to do that at all, Yom
We're going to be doing it
Or
right
we may
here.
find creative ways to do it. There was somebody in Carmiel on Leo Pesach who conducted a Seder. He was in the street and everybody else was on their merpeset.
Yeah.
And he conducted a Seder in the middle of town.
That's right.
It was
But
wonderful.
a lot of us don't have marpessets or yards.
No,
or,
but in a neighborhood where there are,
Living room.
this was a wonderful thing.
yeah.
There were also places where people put their tables out on the street, away from each other,
Yeah.
and did a seder together, which was
Yeah.
very, very nice. At least part of the seder until eating.
Yeah.
Yeah. Right.
So there are things, and we wouldn't have been together like this, like we are now.
Yeah.
If we didn't have these kind of means. So this is a new kind of way. It's not so new, but it's new to us to kind of participate in ways that we sit in our own house, but we see each other and we talk to each other and we can comfort each other. And so we can actually have, let's say, if this continues into Yom Ha'atzmaut, we can have actually a way of being together and maybe sharing what we're cooking and what we're doing and showing people the stuff. And who knows, we can be creative. It's an opportunity.
Indeed.
There are blessings and there are curses. And that's it. My motto has always been every cloud has a silver lining.
Absolutely.
That's right. That's right.
And
Right.
right now I don't always believe it, but yet there are just some things I can. I have a dear friend. You all know I went to a wedding in November. Well, the mother of the grandmother of the groom passed away in New Jersey from corona. She was
I'm sorry
92
to
years
hear.
old. She was not a young woman. She had health problems. And she didn't linger very long. But for the family, it was devastating when she went from her rehab center to the hospital. And they knew they'd never see her again. And they were helpless. She passed away yesterday.
Oh, I'm sorry to
And they
hear
don't know
that.
when the funeral will be because there's all kinds of red tape with the virus. They had things they have to do. But on Monday, there is going to be a shiva on Zoom.
Yep.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And
Yeah, they did
in my
that.
wildest dreams, I could never have attended a shiva in their home in North Carolina like that from here.
That's
And
right.
I'm going to be able to cry with them and mourn with them. And for me, that's very special.
And remember with them.
Amazing, amazing feeling
That's right.
that
Yeah.
this transcends not just our boundaries, but international boundaries. It's such a different feeling that doesn't make this any easier. Let me tell you, I'm the unhappiest person you know right now. And, but there's nothing we can do about it. You know, you have to make the best of it.
Yes, there
I'm terribly at risk. I can't go anywhere. And
there is a lot we can do about it.
yeah,
What we can do about it is accept it with love and understand that we do have a way of how we react. Because if we say this is terrible that we have to stay at home, and we don't have, it's not to say that we're not upset. It's not to say that we're not you know, that we don't have anger, or that we don't have fear. But if we understand that fear is normal for this kind of time, that being upset is normal for this kind of time, that this is a thing that we can take and understand and nurture ourselves and be compassionate to ourselves. Breathe, do regulation, and do your day. Do some kind of a schedule for your day. Because if you do a schedule for your day, you can actually feel much better and much more productive and much more in charge, actually. So if you do, you know, you tell yourself, because you're inside, you're not exercising, do some kind of a very short, you know, you get up in the morning, maybe listen to some music for a little bit before you jump out of bed. Then maybe you can do, I don't know, if you pray, if you do some davening, you can do that. For sure, you know, go and have a shower or whatever, and schedule it. Make sure that you know your schedule. Do a regular daily schedule, and put into it fun things. Put into it things that you can times that you will call your friends, times that you will get in contact with somebody. As you said, Monday there will be a Shiva call, so you put that into your calendar. Today there is a Zoom meeting. You put that into your calendar and you work around it, so that your day is really scheduled and organized. And then you feel more in charge. Then you feel more that you're actually not a victim, but you are doing, and you are, you know, acting. And this business of calling friends and being and thinking of somebody that you haven't thought of for a long time, pick up the phone or pick up something else and get in touch with them. See how they are. Write them an email. That is the kind of thing that will actually make you feel better and make them also feel, wow, somebody is thinking of me. Wow, somebody is really, you know, interested in what I'm doing and how I'm doing. So that's the kind of control that you can have in your life. I mean, there are lots of things that you cannot control, but these you can. And I'm thanking all of the people that organize these Zoom meetings that are very good for us.
Thank you, Reuven. Thank you.
Yes, thank you. This is
So good to see you.
wonderful.
Not only for the shiur, but it's good to see you.
Yes, it is very good to
Very
see
good
you.
to
And this
see you.
is a lot of things to think about.
Yes, indeed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Elsa, can you speak to us?
Yes, I want. First of all, I'm
Hey.
so happy to see all of you. It's incredible. I feel like in your room sitting with you talking as usual, and it's great for me. And I wish you Chag Sameach Pesach, and take care at home. Like what Hannah says is very important. A schedule every day is very important to go.
Elsa, I love
Elsa,
to see you.
Hannah.
Elsa, what time is it where you are?
Here now it's 8 o'clock.
8 o'clock in the morning.
10 past
In the morning.
Yes, I was from 6 in the morning to enter here because to listen the video one class.
Yeah.
And Rav Reuven, I tell you, you know, here on the in the balcony Or saying, who's that crazy people talking about not eating meat and grill in Yom Ha'atzmaut?
Yeah.
Here in Argentina, it's not possible to understand it. But you know what? By sure is certain what he's saying, because meat was so expensive that impossible to buy. And so we decided to fish, but now fish is so expensive. We are not able to buy any fish. So we will be turned into vegetarian. You help me.
Very good.
I'm happy to see all of you. I'm very, very excited to see all of you.
It's
We're excited to
wonderful
see you
to see
too.
you, Elsa.
Wonderful to see you.
Thank you very much. Hannah,
Yes,
send me a mail. You
I
have my
will.
mail. If not, ask to Shulamit, because I lost my contact and your mail. And you, I